Welcome to the second annual Disability Symposium at Vanguard University. This day is all about love, wisdom, and belonging. We are so excited to share what can happen in communities and the transformation that can come about when we receive and recognize the gifts of every single person.
It's an honor to introduce someone who has had such a profound impact on disability and inclusion around the world, Joni Eareckson Tada. Joni is an author, speaker, and founder of Joni and Friends, an organization that has served individuals with disabilities and their families for decades around the world. She has held multiple presidential appointments to the National Council on Disabilities and is the recipient of numerous awards. Beyond her remarkable achievements, Joni brings a voice that is shaped by resilience and a profound understanding of what it means to belong, not in spite of disability, but with disability fully named and embraced.
Good to be with you, Joanne and Jeff.
Joni, we are deeply grateful that you have taken time to send a special message to our Disability Symposium participants, so thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, Joni, for those who might not be familiar with your story among our participants today, would you start just by sharing a little bit about your story?
I broke my neck when I was a teenager back in 1967. And of course, went through a terrible time of depression. And back in the 60s, there wasn't a lot of good rehabilitation programs, policies, philosophy for young people with spinal cord injuries like me. And it's amazing how my little church made such a difference in my family's life. Because there were already relationships between myself and so many church members, I don't think my church had a tough time creating a sense of community and belonging. That's just the way we were back in the early 60s and in the good relationships that had been developed. So I was given an advantage as a young person in a wheelchair because I had a church that just embraced me and loved my family.
Beautiful.
Joni, what was your personal experience with feeling a sense of belonging or with not feeling a sense of belonging in any of your school or church experiences once you acquired your disability?
Well, again, this is back in the 60s, and I'll pursue your line of questioning about places where I did not belong. I did not feel like I belonged in restaurants. That's an odd thing to say, but in order to get into restaurants, I had to wheel down a back alley, past garbage dumps, in a side door, wheel through the kitchen. And in a couple of places, I know when I was fed a hamburger, I remember this so well. So many stares from people, but I couldn't hold a hamburger to my lips. And I just got a sense that I don't fit. This is not my world. And there were other incidences of mostly non-accommodation, getting stuck in the dressing rooms at clothing stores, no curb cuts, going into a place to shop and everybody talking to my caregiver rather than me. Things like that made me alert to people with disabilities. We don't fit in this world. And again, I had a good church. It was the only place I did fit. But through many years of those initial struggles, I realized I want to do something about this. I want to be a change agent. I want to help create an environment where people like me and other families who have children with other disabilities are included, and not just included, welcomed, yes, but ultimately embraced. That's what I wanted to do. It's how I got into advocacy.
Joni, the first time I heard your story, it was connected to your art. And it struck me so much, even at that stage, and this is many years ago, your ability to kind of create and to demonstrate this artistic ability in a situation where you have this disabling condition. And it seems so central to the message, the ability to create beauty. So could you talk a little bit about how that happened? Where did that art start and come from, and how did it inform both your faith and your advocacy?
Well, before I was injured, spinal cord injured, I had a talent for art. My father was a painter by hobby, not as profession, but I learned so much about painting from him, and I took lessons. So when I broke my neck and lost the use of my hands and my legs, I'm a quadriplegic, it was my occupational therapist at the rehab center who said, "Joni, you can't use your hands, so how about using your mouth?" This was for things like typing and turning pages of a book, and I gave it a try, spit the pen out on the floor because I thought, this is demeaning. But then I sat in occupational therapy and I saw them wheel in a young man who had far less functioning ability than I did. He could only move his head, and he willingly took that pencil and wrote the alphabet on a tablet of paper, put on an easel, and I felt so ashamed of myself. It was a man stepping into his new life, and if I wasn't going to get stuck, I had to do the same. And so he really inspired me. And after I became proficient and started painting and employing some of the lessons I had learned back when I was on my feet, I saw that my artwork was a way to express all that was going on inside my life. And I also saw it was a way to give back, as it were. So many people were investing in my life, my family, my friends, people from church. I wanted to give back to them, and what could I do? I'm a quadriplegic. Well, I can paint. And so I painted Christmas gifts, birthday gifts, all kinds of things to connect with people and forge those friendships that, to me, were so life-saving. People began to take note of my artwork. There were small art fairs in the city. A couple of museums even were interested, several newspaper articles. And so this began to draw a lot of attention. And when people would interview me about my art, I would always take an opportunity to say that it's a matter of inclusion. It's a matter of belonging. I've been so blessed. I have talent, but there are those who do not. And we need to create space for them to express their talents and their abilities. So whenever the focus was on myself, a newspaper interview, whatever, I would try to broaden people's perspectives to see a much broader world of disability. Not just me, but so many others, especially children with disabilities, and creating opportunities for them to enjoy the mainstream of life.
Beautiful.
I love that you were using opportunities to advocate for others. It's just phenomenal. Yeah.
Well, may I share a story real quickly? When I was in rehab, and I shouldn't call it rehab, because back in the 60s, this was long before the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 and long before the Americans with Disabilities Act. There were not many policies. There were no pathways for people with disabilities. And I remember being in what they called a rehab center, but was really a state institution. I was put on a geriatric ward. And there was one young man in a wheelchair sitting by the elevator, and I'd pass him every day when they took me down to physical therapy. And he was always smoking cigarettes. That's what you could do back then in an institution. And I developed a relationship with him, and I said to him, "Bobby, why are you sitting here smoking all the time? Isn't there anything else you can do?" And he said to me, well, why do you think I am smoking? It was, you're going to kill yourself with those things. And he said, that's my purpose.
Mm.
And I was so struck with the pain, the isolation, the feeling of hopelessness, the despair, that was his idea of living, to get himself dead as quickly as he could because of his despair over his disability. And here I was with my friends coming to visit me from church, thinking, this man needs relationship.
Mm.
He needs friends. Not somebody who would be paid to sit next to him, as would one of the hospital aides or geriatric aides, but no, he needs friends. And my church, I have to give it credit, rolling up their sleeves, practicing Christianity where the rubber meets the road, and developing relationships with other people in that geriatric ward. When I got my hair washed, those girls in the ward with me got their hair washed. And when I got my nails done, friends would also bring in nail polish for them. And it was the beginning of realizing that how important relationships are when it comes to inclusion and lifting people out of that despair and isolation. So I thank the Lord for what I learned through that young man, Bobby.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that story with us.
Mm.
I guess this is kind of picking up on the story. So you've spent so many years advocating for people with disabilities and their families. And when you think of the word belonging, what does that mean to you?
Oh, when I think of the word belonging, basically, I think of three things. Somebody knows my story. My loved one, if it's a child with a disability, is valued here. And number three, I'm not only listened to, but my voice matters. When I speak into a situation, people listen and they care about my family. I think belonging, a sense of belonging is a sense of family. It's a sense of not just, hello, how are you? And then walk the other way. It's you're needed here. Please come. We need your voice. We want to make a difference. We want to create a culture that honors God and diversity. Please, would you help us do that? I think that's what I think of when I think of belonging, relationship.
Yes.
So
Beautiful.
For an example, many churches, let's say, want to start small groups, but sometimes that can be so structured and a little bureaucratic. You may have to fill out a form, and there are certain assignments, and it just feels a little institutional sometimes. When do I talk? When do I not talk? Do people even care about what I want to say? The leader does all the speaking. And I think God's way of small group creation is by in that small group creating community. And usually that happens around weakness. It happens around need. There is a mother who speaks about her struggles with her raising her child with a disability. She's single, and she's got a lot of stress with making financial ends meet and insurance claims that need to be addressed, and her child's schooling. And when she shares that, the weakness, the exposure of weakness pulls out within others, I think, a sense of compassion, not pity, but true compassion. Well, please, we can do something about that. How can we help? Let's create a situation here where we all can help you. Bingo. Community is birthed, and it evolves organically, naturally. And so before you know it, the small group is growing because people want to be included in a group where they sense there is true compassion and community, but it all focuses around need. And then others share their needs. And the community grows stronger and healthier And it all reflects 1 Corinthians chapter 12. I think right there is God's heart for the church. He is glorified when there is, when weakness is addressed and people lend their strengths. And before you know it, it's just a beautiful body of Christ that is functioning as Christ's body should and would.
Wonderful.
Beautiful, Joni. And I love the reference to 1 Corinthians 12 and the body with its many parts and each one playing a critical role in the functioning of the whole. For families of kids with special needs, in our conversation earlier, I mentioned to you that we have a son who has a disability and we've been on the journey for a long time. Oftentimes, families that have been touched by disability feel like their faith community or the school considers their child a burden rather than the kind of blessing that you described. You've spent a lot of time with families that have been touched by disability in one way or another. What would you want to say to leaders of schools or faith communities about the families that have been touched by disability who are part of their community?
Families want their loved one with a disability to be treated as a person, not a problem. I think it's most painful for families with special needs children when they go into either a school or a church and feel as though, suddenly they're a challenge to be managed. And that I hope leaders can pick up on and sense and help that family feel not just welcome, gee, we're glad you're here, what do we do with you? But convey a sense of, we're so glad you're here because you know what, you're needed. And you can help us. You can assist us in addressing a culture that needs to change in order to celebrate weakness. And I think parents of special needs children are most grateful when their opinions are asked for, when they participate in, let's say, designing a disability ministry. What does this look like? Or perhaps a classroom structure or programs of outreach. These are just small ways, small steps where moms and dads feel as though, you know what, my life experience has gleaned a little bit of wisdom that might be of use here. And here are some leaders in this church and school that want to hear from me. And so inviting opinions, perhaps being a guide to work with the leaders and walking through the facility and just addressing classrooms where there's a need for inclusion. People want to know that their opinion matters. I heard something, I don't even know who said this, but whoever said it was rather clever. They said that access is a ramp. Mainstreaming is welcome you through the door. Inclusion is here, have a seat at the table. But belonging is having a voice that matters at the table. And I that's, please don't credit that metaphor with me, but it's a wonderful example of how it's not just about accommodating people as though they were a problem to be managed. It's about involving them, embracing them, to help us, show us how we can change. What can we do? Do you know other families who might want to attend our church services? Relationships are the big key, aren't they?
Yeah. Are there examples? You talked early on in the interview about the way in which your own faith community, your own church, embraced you early on. And we hear about both kinds of experiences. Experiences in faith communities that are embracing, where belonging is a priority. And we also hear about cases where faith communities haven't been able to do that. Now, in your work with churches, and you do a lot of it with Joni and Friends and your various ministries, are there some examples that you have seen that you say that is what we're after?
Oh,
That's the kind of experience we want folks to have.
Well, let me give you a great example and a really bad example. Shall I start with a bad example first?
Sure.
Right now, I know of a church not far from here. It's a large church, a couple of thousand members, and the elder of this church is 92 years old, and he has cancer, and his daughter is just bending over backward to help her dad, and she's driving in from some distance to be with him every week and then drive back on the weekend to help her family. And so she is running back and forth and back and spending time with her dad and taking care of his medications and meals. I tell you what, she's got a lot of visitors from the church, a whole lot of visitors who spend time with this elderly gentleman while his daughter sits back with her hands folded on her lap, utterly exhausted, utterly isolated and alone. That church might think they're doing a good job of supporting this family, this little family, but can't we go one step beyond visitors? Can't people have their eyes open to see and ascertain what life would be like when everybody walks out the door and goes home to their own families? That is such a heartbreaking example. I've called, well, I don't want to go into too many specifics, but I've knocked on doors, called, made phone calls, and tried to advocate on behalf of this young woman who needs help. Yeah. She needs respite. She needs family care, someone to come in and just give her a break to go get a cup of coffee at Starbucks or something. So that's kind of a bad example. Visiting is not necessarily providing respite, you know.
Right.
In fact, it may provide a little extra work going to the kitchen to get a Coca-Cola or a cup of coffee. So that's an example of, oh, my heart breaks for that young woman and her dad, their elderly dad. But a good example is just 2 exits down the freeway from our headquarters here at Joni and Friends, Calvary Community Church. We, years ago, just were part of helping them kickstart their disability outreach, and they have so many varied opportunities for families. I love their pampering day for special needs moms. Come on in with your child with a disability if he's on school break or weekend. Come on in, and we'll have volunteers trained to take care of your little one while you just sit here and get pampered. Get your nails done, get your hair cut, try this new makeup on, just enjoy coffee with a friend, and not even worry about your child because he's being taken care of. There's another good example. Actually, Grace Community Church, not far from here, they have an outreach where they invite parents to come in on an evening and listen to a lecture from the Social Security Administration's representative, or perhaps listen to a lawyer speak about setting up a trust fund for your child, any number of different, or they would invite an educator who would come and encourage the family how to create an effective IEP for their child. Parent, they listen to practical lectures. These people aren't believers, but they're drawn to this church because while they're being fed information that's really useful, and they're meeting other parents of children with disabilities, their kids are in the gymnasium having a great time with volunteers, trained volunteers who are equipped and ready to serve a child with a disability. And what a great way to bring people in. It demonstrates you are welcomed here. We need you here. We've prepared a place for you, and we want to serve your needs. And it's amazing how many of those parents have come to Christ because they see the gospel oh my goodness, it has hands and feet here. And the gospel is working here.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful picture of, again, the diversity that God longs to see in his body, the body of Christ.
I love those examples. And one of the things it points out is that when we talk about embracing and empowering people with disability, children, young people, and adults with disabilities, and creating a sense of belonging, we're not just talking about the individual, we're talking about the whole family. There is a family around that person who oftentimes is feeling excluded as well. And so the examples you've given are such rich ways in which churches can embrace not only the individual, but the whole family.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you for sharing that.
Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Education for Love and Wisdom podcast. You can follow us online by visiting our website, www.vanguard.edu/love and wisdom. We'd also love to hear from you. If you have any thoughts, comments, or questions, you can email us at loveandwisdom@vanguard.edu. Thank you to all who have contributed to the podcast. And thank you, our listeners and our viewers, for joining this episode. We'll talk soon.